we are not where we are overnight. In terms of the high cost of living, in terms of the cost of food, in terms of the shortage of resources to our universities. For the first time, we are hearing that universities, public universities, are unable to function. They are going bust. We did not get there overnight. It is not instant coffee. We are there because of a series of cumulative commissions and omissions that have accumulated and brought us to where we are. We did not just wake up to find ourselves in that situation. Something was not being done right over a period of time. So incrementally, this has put us where we are. So my fellow Kenyans, again, incrementally, we must work to get us out of where we are. We must fix the debt. We must rationalize the taxes. We must look at our priorities. We must figure out the resources, the meager resources that we have. Where are we directing them? We then equally must figure out what are the new areas that we can bring on the table that can help spur the economy. Can we do something in mining? Can we do something in the marine economy? Can we improve on our agricultural practices so that we can move in a different direction?
Excellency, the Prime Cabinet Secretary. First and foremost, my name is Ashura Michael.
So each and every opportunity that you have, and you have the ability.
About the 30% AGPO to youth, women, and the people with disability.
Is relevant to the theme, not about the economy. My question is on the narrative of democracy. These officers.
All right, thank you. Though you mentioned Malala is not here, tutapeleke ujumbe kwa Malala. Thank you.
And God willing, if my health is perfect, I hope I will be here.
The government, our funds. So you people should tell us if you are creating these offices yet.
The Controller of Budget report shows that 370 billion were allocated to.
When we took over, there was a very expensive fuel subsidy. Expensive. Requiring that the government must set aside 20 billion shillings every month to subsidize fuel. But who was really the beneficiary of that subsidy? Was it the ordinary person, or was it a few players in the industry? So one of the difficult decisions that the government had to make was to terminate that subsidy, because it just meant more and more taxation to the Kenyan. It was not sustainable. It was not sustainable. So the government had to cut back and say, we cannot continue. So let us stop the hemorrhage. Let us stop the subsidy, because we cannot sustain it. When the government of Ruto, which I am serving in, took the decision on the subsidy, is because we realized that the subsidy was causing more hemorrhage to the economy than what it intended to cure. All right? And I gave the figure of about 20 billion per month, which was supposed to be raised to fund the subsidy. It was clearly not sustainable. Clearly, there are some teething problems, even as we speak, on how we can improve on the fuel supply flow in the country, and that we shall do. But clearly, we are not going back to the road of subsidies. I want to make it very clear that there is no public expenditure that has occurred in the conversation around Tesi Musalia. And I don't see any public expenditure occurring, because I fully appreciate that activities of this nature are not government activities. They are social, philanthropic interventions that we make. And for the avoidance of doubt, Mrs. Musalia Mudavadi has been at this process, whether in government, whether I was in government, or whether I was not in government. And we shall not stop supporting people in any part of the country through charitable efforts. But I am very clear that it shall not be at the expense of the exchequer. To enhance democracy, political parties are recognized in our Constitution. They are then cultivated, they have structures, and if there is going to be any alteration whatsoever, there are democratic processes rooted in the constitutions of those particular parties that will guide the process for such a decision if it becomes necessary. So at this stage, what I would like to tell people, if you are to ask me, the competing challenges we have the drought, we have the fight to bring the cost of living down, we have to deal with the pending bills and so forth. To me, the issue of a merger or non-merger is actually at the bottom of the priorities.
There's a conversation going around amongst Kenyans on the need of political parties to merge, to form one party, going the way of Tanzania, South Africa, and the United States of America. Now that we have representation of almost all political parties here, and I appreciate Professor seated next to me here, what is your advice? What is your take? What are you telling Kenyans for purposes of sustainability?
We have reached a stage where it is sometimes imagined that we can fund everything. When somebody says we want agriculture to be robust, the assumption is that somewhere the government must look for money and fund everything. When it is education, somewhere along the line, the assumption is that the government must fund everything. When it is universal health care, the assumption is that the government must fund everything. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenyans must stop living a lie. It is not possible in any economy in the world for the government to fund everything. It is not possible, including the richest of the economies. So we must come to terms and start looking at it and saying, so how do we rationalize the resources that we have on the table? How do we make sure that the resources we deploy will generate growth? How do we ask ourselves that the resources we deploy shall contribute to equity? And how can we also confirm to ourselves that the resources we deploy shall be sustainable? How much can you tax? Because government has no free money. Government must raise money through taxation. That is the starting point. So how much can you tax? How much? Corporate tax is at 30% today, or is it 35? VAT maximum, I think, is 16%. So you must ask yourself, how much can you tax? These are the fundamental questions that we will. And if you cannot tax anymore, then what do? Then sometimes you cut back expenditure. We have reached a stage where it is sometimes imagined that we can fund everything. When somebody says we want agriculture to be robust, the assumption is that somewhere the government must look for money and fund everything. When it is education, somewhere along the line, the assumption is that the government must fund everything. When it is universal health care, the assumption is that the government must fund everything. Ladies and gentlemen, Kenyans must stop living a lie. It is not possible in any economy in the world for the government to fund everything. It is not possible, including the richest of the economies. So we must come to terms and start looking at it and saying, so how do we rationalize the resources that we have on the table? How do we make sure that the resources we deploy will generate growth? How do we ask ourselves that the resources we deploy shall contribute to equity? And how can we also confirm to ourselves that the resources we deploy shall be sustainable? The question is this: if you formulate policy, does it point in the direction of growth? If you have a policy in agriculture, if you have a policy in manufacturing, if you have policy in education, does it point to the direction of growth? If it is not pointing in the direction of growth, put a question mark on that policy. The next question is this: if it is a question of the economy, if it is a question of a subsidy, if it is a question of a taxation, if it is a question of resource allocation in society to a particular sector, whether health or whether it is communications, does it bring equity? Does it point to the direction of equity? Is it equalizing our society? Is it making the village in Tana River better? Is it making the village in Vihiga better? Is it making the village in Kajiado better? If it is legislation, is it a legislation that contributes to equity, that underpins equity? If not, put a question mark on that proposal that you have on the table. The final message is sustainability. Sustainability. How do you fund your programs? How do you fund them? That is the question of sustainability. Is it something that you can carry through? Or is it an issue that within a short time you'll be unable to sustain? If, again, there's a serious question mark on the sustainability of the program, of the legislation, of the proposal, again put a question mark on that item.
Concern is with the word progressive, because when you say progressive, it means that when you're having these appointments in public service and other areas, you'll say that maybe progressive should wait until later. So that is why persons with disabilities are not getting these positions. So I think maybe it would be good if that word progressive, you see a way of getting it out of the Constitution. Good. Because we really need these positions as persons with disabilities. We need equity, as you spoke about it. And we also need employment, just like anyone else. So if we are talking about this 5% realization and we're saying it's progressive, it may just be postponed for many, many years to come.
Thank you.
So maybe you could look for a way of getting this word progressive out of the Constitution.
We have to start clawing back and regaining and taking corrective measures. And ladies and gentlemen, Kenyans, these solutions are not like instant coffee. Don't let any politician, Musalia Mudavadi included, cheat you that you have instant coffee solutions to the problems that we are facing. It is going to be commitment over a period of time to turn things round.